All right. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Welcome to the program, Monday through Friday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Charles Moscowitz, as I launch into this great experience of doing live radio. You're welcome to join the program. I am taking calls. Let me hook up my beloved Yeti microphone here. I am taking calls. Thank you very much. Thank you. At 617-396-4958. That's 617-396-4958. There, I got my volume up. I got everything up that should be up. Let's see. I've got the program is live on DLive, Vaughn, Periscope, Facebook, of course, YouTube, our flagship, LinkedIn, and several other sites. We've got Trovo and a lot of the smaller sites, and I'm working to expand those numbers. In fact, I'm pretty sure that very soon I'm going to be up live on Roku, which is a TV network, and I think that's going to be that's going to really expand the program, which is my goal here. My goal is to have a daily live experience where we take calls, where we engage in conversation, all within the bounds of community standards, of course, and where we build a real solid discussion group where we can really take a look at the issues of the day and influence our own thinking and perhaps the thinking of others. So welcome aboard. Please join the conversation. TikTok has me suspended until Thursday, so I can't take any TikToks, but I'll be back up and running. I don't know how long they'll let me stay there, but in this day of censorship, you have to be careful. The walls have ears, so let's be careful. In the Talmud, they talk about the rabbis who codified the Talmud were in Roman times, and the Romans were the fascists of their day. I mean, they were totalitarians, to say the least, and they did not like the Jews, and they banned prayer. They had destroyed the temple, of course, and they had defeated the last Jewish rebellion, which was the Bar Kokhba rebellion. And at that point, it was very difficult to be a Jew in Judea. In fact, they renamed the province Palestina, which is a Latin term, Elio Palestina, so as to completely destroy Judaism, which they viewed, but the Emperor Hadrian viewed as a dead faith and as a dead people. He basically declared that the Jews no longer exist. Ha, we still do. But, so they renamed Judea Alia Palestina after the ancient enemy of the Israelites, the Philistines, who were Greek peoples who invaded the coast and who fought wars and tried to destroy Israel, all the way from the time of Joshua right up to the time of King David, who finally defeated them. Now they're back. The Romans decided to rebrand. And they also renamed Jerusalem Alia Capitolina, and they put a statue of Apollo on the site of what was the temple. So Jews were banned from going to Jerusalem completely, and Jewish prayer was banned. In fact, that's why even to this day, one of the central prayers, why am I talking about this? I don't know, but here we go. And by the way, I mean, let me ramble on a little bit more here, but while I do, you're welcome to join the program with any comments on any issues. 617-396-4958. I'd love to hear from you. 617-396-4958. And I'm getting to the story here to make a point about censorship. All right. So Jewish prayer was banned. Jewish assembly was banned. Jewish speech was banned. Certainly the Jewish press was banned. And it was very dangerous to be a Jew in what had become known by the Romans as Palestina. And when I say dangerous, I mean people taken away and slaughtered and disappeared. And this is the Romans did not take things lightly. They were extreme authoritarians. Now, I'm not drawing any comparisons. I'm simply noting a matter of history here. All right. And so the Jews would get together in secret and they would intone the Shema, which is the holiest chant, the holiest prayer in the Jewish faith. Even to this day, it's a simple declaration. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. It is simply a statement. A Jew makes this at the moment when they die. A Jew intones this every day. It's a simple statement that hear everyone. Hear, O Israel, hear me. God is God. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. There's one God, one creator of the universe, one giver of the law, the great God that we all show respect for. We bend our knee to only, by the way. We don't bend to any man, only God. But that was forbidden, so they came up with a little second prayer, which they would whisper today. Back then they could say it because it would set the Romans off on a tangent, and that was Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Blessed be his name forever and ever. And that was serving as a substitute because if you said the Shema, you could be executed. And so as long as those decrees are in place, we would have to use a little second language to make our point. And even to this day, out of respect for that memory and out of a remembrance of the oppression that we had to endure, we still say the Baruch Shem after we say the Shema, and we say it quietly. We whisper it or we kind of intone it. Whereas the Shema, we say clearly, openly, and with full concentration. And the reason I mention this is because that's what we're dealing with now. That's what I feel like I'm dealing with every time I turn on the microphone here. The walls have ears, as the rabbi said. You have to speak carefully. Sometimes you have to use euphemistic language to make your point, because if you say something too clearly, you'll be killed, and then you're no use to anybody. And so when I talk about, there are so many issues I'd like to talk about here, so many people that I'd like to interview, but I know that we would be getting into topics that are forbidden. And so I feel reluctant to do it. I feel fearful that I'm going to lose the station. I'll be wiped off the internet, which, doesn't serve anyone's purpose. I mean, I'm here to do what I do, to do what I love, but also to have influence, I hope, in a positive way, to make a difference in the world. And so if I'm completely wiped away, then I'm not going to serve anyone's interest. So it's a dilemma that we all have to deal with in these times of censorship. And when I say censorship, I know I talked about this yesterday. I think it's worth reiterating. I understand self-censorship. I understand community standards. I understand what really is appropriate. I've been doing radio in various capacities for almost 20 years in small markets in Greater Boston, where I live. And I know what it is. I know what it is to go to a radio station and host a talk show and have to sit in a studio where the owner has an office right next door down the hall, and where there are salespeople and there are administrators and there's a board op and there's people walking in and out, and you have to work with people. You have to look at them in the eye. You have to maintain certain conventional standards, and that does mean that you don't get into certain things. You have to have a sense, almost a sixth sense of what is and what isn't appropriate in that community. So, and also there are FCC regulations. You don't want to engage in slander and libel. And so I understand what those standards are, and I adhered to those standards pretty perfectly, not absolutely, but I never got into any big trouble. I mean, I certainly was fired a few times, but it wasn't because I had messed around with those standards. There was other things going on. It's an interesting story, but suffice to say that I know from experience what community standards are, and I also know what censorship is. And we are dealing right now with political censorship. There is a ban on discussing issues that are real, that are legitimate political questions. We are banned from discussing, for example, legitimate statistics compiled by government agencies and respected doctors about the coronavirus and various treatment modalities for it and issues around the vaccine. Those subjects are now forbidden. Now, I'm not talking about getting into some nutty conspiracy theories. That, look, to an extent, I understand that there is a reasonable expectation that nobody can just get up and shoot their mouth off in any way they want and discuss stuff that's not real. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about legitimate doctors who have medical degrees and experience in the field being banned because they are discussing things that don't go with a very specific and approved point of view. And in this case, I am making reference indirectly, because of the censorship, to various medical modalities that have proven to be fairly, if not very effective in the treatment of COVID-19, by which any discussion of these things has been banned. Now, I'm not going to get into what they are, and I don't generally do those sorts of topics because I'm not a doctor. But I do wonder why those things are banned. Is that community standards, or is that political? Is there a political agenda afoot that wants to see things understood in a certain way and wants to avoid other things? Is this a control of the means of communication, to use the Marxist term? I would argue, yeah, it is. Okay, so I'm going to try to get into a couple of issues, but I'm going to try to do it in a way that tiptoes around the topic at hand because of the censorship. We do have that problem. And one of those issues is a loss. Well, I don't want to talk about this because this runs a little too close to home. The ongoing audits are an issue. Now, I want to be careful here because these are hot button issues. All I can say to the censors over at YouTube is that I am not discussing anything here that isn't either provably happening or that has not been covered by at least the local media in the states that they are happening in. And that is these ongoing audits of the 2020 election. Now, I am not commenting here, YouTube censorship, on what those audits may prove. I'm not saying that they're going to prove discrepancies. I'm not saying they won't. I am simply stating that the state legislators in the states in question, particularly Arizona, but now also Georgia and Pennsylvania and possibly Wisconsin and Michigan, the state legislators who hold the sole plenary power to regulate such matters as audits and as elections and as election policy, they have deemed that there is enough information about discrepancies, possible, not definite, possible discrepancies and irregularities to warrant an audit. That is what they are supposed to do. They're elected officials. That's what is called democracy. You know, the left likes to crow about democracy. Well, what about it? Democracy says that the people, and they're operating through their elected representatives, have a say in such matters as election policy. And the people operating through their state senate in Arizona approved and financed a full forensic audit of Maricopa County. Now that audit is near completion. The counting part is now over. The canvassing part, I think, is underway. And what that means is that it's like doing a census. You basically check the ballots and try to determine whether or not they are connected to a person and whether or not that person is a registered voter. That is underway. And the problem that they're running against, it's a real roadblock, is that the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, which has fought them every step of the way, and which is unelected, by the way, which is there to monitor elections, they have refused to turn over to the auditors and to the state Senate the passwords to the voting machines. They have refused to do that. So the state Senate has issued subpoenas demanding that information. Now, that is within their constitutional purview. When you have a state Senate, they can issue subpoenas if they want information from an agency, especially when that agency is funded by the state. They had a contract from the state, so they were paid by state taxpayers. And if you have a state Senate asking for information from that agency, and they refuse to hand over that information, that state Senate has the authority to issue a subpoena to demand that information. And if that subpoena is not properly answered, the state Senate has the legal authority, the lawful authority, to put those people in jail until they do answer. You know, it's sort of like, I mean, I remember, well, I don't know if this is analogous, but here in Boston years ago, we had a case where Susan Warnick, a reporter, had some information. She was from someone who was being accused of a crime, and there was a trial, and she refused to release that information, or she refused to release the name of the person who gave her that information, and she was put in jail. And she stayed in jail, I think, for 2 or 3 weeks, because she said, this is my right as a reporter, I'm not going to release it, until eventually the person himself came forward and revealed himself, so she was then released. But the point I'm making here is that she was not cooperating with a grand jury, I think, in that case. And so she was put in jail. Same thing can happen here. Maybe that's not a good example, but the point I'm making is that the state Senate in Arizona has the authority to get that information, even if they have to put people in jail. And I hope that they have the spine to do what should be done and proceed to have those people detained until they release the information that they are being asked to release. And of course, it brings up the broader question, which is exactly what it is. What is it that they're trying to hide? We can only go on rumor, but I would say this, based on the testimony, and there's a great video making the rounds right now. I don't know if it's been taken down. I don't know if it's been censored, but I put a copy of it up on my Facebook page of liberal Congress people, liberal senators, liberal media people, Lester Holt, right, NBC News, doing stories on and talking about in the Congress under congressional hearings, the fact, the contention, thank you, that the electronic voting machines were online, that they had the ability to be online during an election, and as such, they could be manipulated. This was a big, my own Senator Elizabeth Warren talked about this in testimony publicly. I don't hear a peep out of her now that the shoe is on the other foot, but the fact is that that's congressional record. That was public. And so that leads me to think, based on all that testimony, and based on a full segment that was done by Lester Holt, which is also online, I don't know if it's been taken down, where he interviews experts who say, these machines thousands of them around the country can go online during an election, which means they can be manipulated by some outside person, that the numbers could be fudged, or other mischief could happen. And that could include overseas, by the way, not just in the United States. I mean, the internet's all over the world. And that if people have the password or whatever, they could be hacked. That this is why they're not releasing the routers and the passwords, because if they do, then the auditors in Maricopa County will find out that those machines had been online or they had been hacked, and that the election had improprieties. And that could change the dynamic of the election. Let's not forget that the election was extremely close, not only in terms of Biden carrying just a little over 10,000 votes in a state that cast, I think, 4.5 million ballots, but it could also affect down races like the Senate race and other races. And that could have an earthquake-like effect. Now, the main argument being delivered by people who oppose the audit in Arizona is that it's too late, the election's over, and we need to move on. Let's pay no attention. And to get into this is too disruptive. It's too shocking. It's too problematic for the system. We can't do this. And that was the argument, by the way, of most of the judges who refused to hear cases. There were almost 60 cases brought by people who had witnessed things that they wanted heard in a court around the election. And the judges refused to do it, and they found technical reasons to avoid it because they did not want to get into politics. They don't want to comment. They don't want to affect any outcomes. The outcome had already been predetermined by who knows who. And that entire line of reasoning is not only wrong on the surface, but it's un-American. America is supposed to be, and America, I believe, is, as John Adams said, and I'm paraphrasing, a nation of laws and not men. We are not enacting policies because we feel like it, because it helps us or hurts us, or because we like them. We enact policies based upon the law. And if the law is not convenient for our particular point of view, tough noogies. That's what we have here. We have a constitutional republic. And a constitutional republic is just that, a republic based on a constitution. And what is a constitution? A constitution is a written document. It is law that is there to be an objective milestone to vitiate or to avoid the whims of the mob or people who don't like something in the law. If you don't like something in the law, you open up your constitution, whether it be federal or state, and you look at the law and you figure out a way to change it through that system. That's what a republic is. We're not a pure democracy where the mob can rise up and make something happen. We are a republic based on democratic principles, which means that we are a nation of laws. And if the law says that there had been improprieties in that election and that there is evidence of that, then there is a legal remedy for that. And you may not like that legal remedy. You may say, oh, but we don't want to change anything. Why? Because we don't like it to be changed. It doesn't matter what you like. What matters is, are we going to be a nation of laws? And if the law is able to proceed, and if there is a means of due process in these matters, then the law will take care of itself. And the law is that the state Senate, our elected representatives in our state house, in this case, Arizona, in other cases, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, If the law says, if the state representatives say that they want to take another look at an election, that is democracy. That's the law. That's their right. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution says that the state legislators have the legal plenary right to make laws and regulations around elections. No one else. And so if the state legislator wants to do this, it is not anyone's right to stand in the way. And if you don't like it, elect another state rep, elect another state senator, and then let them come up and say this. That's why we have elections. That's why they are in office, to make those decisions and to do so within the context of what's lawful and what's constitutional. And regulating elections is lawful and constitutional and is morally right, I might add. So anyhow, or as my late grandmother used to say, anyhow, come on down, give me a call. Let's go on the air. Let's talk about this. 617-396-4958. 617-396-4958. Now, let's see, there's another article here I wanted to talk a little bit about. And this one is in the Gateway Pundit, which I recommend every day to take a look at. I look at it every day. It's excellent. The Hoff brothers out of St. Louis, they're great reporters, the two of them, the twin brothers. They started this around the same time that Andrew Breitbart started his thing. And they're just doing a great job of on a lot of fronts. They have an article here. This is August 3rd. The election group's Jennifer Morell sided with corrupt Arizona Secretary of State after the election, but then later took down her tweet. And then there's a picture of Jennifer Morell. Now, earlier I read that Jennifer Morell, who is with this really far left-wing George Soros-funded group, is involved in the elections in several states, the day of the election, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, and in apparently now in Arizona, and also in Georgia. And they have this so-called The Elections Group. They have now turned up in several states. They also seem to work in conjunction with Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, who personally, out of his own pocket, spread around $400 million to various states to buy influence, probably, or to grease some palms. These were people who were brought in to conduct election policy, like counting votes and other processes. Now, again, I feel nervous getting into this because I don't want to get taken down. So I think I'm going to keep it brief here and just look at this article and let's move on from it. I mean, I don't want to go too far here. Jennifer Morell showed up everywhere before, during, and after the 2020 election in numerous states. In one tweet she posted after the election, she highlighted a press release by corrupt Secretary of State Katie Hobbs. Now, the term corrupt is an editorial comment by the Gateway Pundit. I'm not saying it. I don't know if she's corrupt. I believe personally that she probably is, because of some of the things she's done right after the election, admitting that there had been a hack and then denying it, and trying to prevent the audit, and going out on television with Rachel Maddow practically every night, complaining about the audit and throwing mud at it and referring to people as right wing. That tells me that there's something going on under the hood with her. This tweet has since been taken down. Jennifer Morell from the Election Group and other far left and many Soros-related organizations. Only a couple of days ago, we reported that Morell was at an event in Colorado months before the 2020 election with election officials from Dominion. Okay, I don't know how much more I want to say about this. there's some stuff here that's it's pretty hairy, but and there's some good video, particularly of Arizona Secretary of State Hobbs. I think what I'm going to say here, because I might be in trouble already, is that I'm trying to be careful. Go to Gateway Pundit and look it up for yourself. thegatewaypundit.com. Make up your own mind. I'm going to conclude at this point because I'm going to get in even bigger trouble if I continue. And again, I'm on YouTube, so I want to conduct the station in accord with YouTube. I'd like to mention as program notes that I have a guest coming on Thursday who is going to be talking about the oppression of, the way Asian Americans are being treated and discriminated against in this country right now. And I have a guest on Friday who's a young, upcoming conservative talk show host. David will be coming on with me on Thursday to talk about Jewish issues and Israel. Other than that, I haven't scheduled anyone. I'm trying to do an open lines thing here. Let me just end by noting that part of the last election saw the advent of liberal left-wing secretaries of states in all of the states that, including a Republican in Georgia, that being Brad Raffensperger, in all the states that were contested, and they certainly are in place in other states as well. My own state of Massachusetts, where there's some issues about the office coordinating with Twitter to take down tweets from an opposing candidate. I'm not going to mention that case. I don't want to go there. And also New York State, where you have a Secretary of State. Well, actually, in that case, it's an Attorney General who is trying to prosecute President Trump, which is just disgusting and evil, in my opinion. But as far as the election goes, there was a number of them who were elected with the help of that multi-billionaire whose last name rhymes with Soros. It's a Yiddish word. We know who I'm talking about. And probably Zuckerberg's walk-around money was thrown in there, as would be the case with Brad Raffensperger in Georgia. And this radical so-called elections group, which apparently has connections to the United Nations. And other radical left-wing groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ACLU and all the usual suspects. That these groups combined both with financial resources and in-kind support, which is the generating of their followers in a particular state or jurisdiction to volunteer. It's like an in-kind donation. It's not cash, it's time, by doing stuff like canvassing and making phone calls and maybe even things around voting that might not be so savory. I'm not saying they did. I'm just saying that that's how in-kind support can work in certain situations. And I'm saying this as someone who ran for Congress in Massachusetts back in 2004 and got an inside look at how these things work. Anyway, these shadowy left-wing groups, the Tide Group, which is a front for multi-billion and millionaire left-wingers to donate money and not have their name associated with it, so they can continue to conduct business while funding left-wing causes. It's kind of a combination of all of these groups helping to elect certain secretaries of states, possibly attorneys generals, and that it was these secretaries of states in Georgia with Brad Raffensperger, in Pennsylvania with Shapiro, in Michigan with Jocelyn Benson, and apparently now in Colorado or in Arizona with Katie Hobbs. And then you have this one look at this one's a good one, in Colorado, who, she wants to, let me just see here. Soros-funded Colorado Secretary of State moves to eliminate signature verification, protect dead voters, and put gag order on poll workers. There's a hearing, by the way, today at 1:00. In other words, what they did was they all did things outside of their congressional purview with regard to elections. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, Shapiro in Pennsylvania, several days before the election, said that Trump is not going to win here. How did he know that in advance? So there's some very strange things that happened there. I'll just give one more example before I sign off and get myself in complete trouble. I hope I'm not banned today. If I'm still on the air tomorrow, then I'll thank the star. I'll thank God. I mean, you know, this is the situation, the world we're living in here. That Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who is one of the people that seem to be of this clique of secretaries of states, she, by use of her office, enacted a regulation before the election saying that poll workers and election officials who count and examine absentee ballots no longer had to observe the state law, which said that signatures had to be verified. They could just go ahead and verify them if they thought the signature sort of vaguely resembled another signature. In other words, they didn't have to do that anymore. We don't know how many thousands, if not tens of thousands, of absentee ballots might have been counted after that law was enacted by her. And we don't know which way they might have gone. We know that there were hundreds of thousands of unsolicited absentee ballots simply mailed out across the country under the excuse of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that none of that was approved, or at least most of it was not approved by the state legislatures, who have the sole power to make such rules. Well, in the case of Benson, she made the rule without consulting the state legislature. And 3 or 4 months after the election, it was challenged. A state judge ruled that it was not constitutional and threw it out. But it's too late now. The election's over. I'm only bringing it up to note that, and I'll finish on this note, I really need to go because I'm afraid I'm going to say more. Hold me back. That if there's one thing that we've learned from this election fiasco, and I've learned a lot of things, I've really opened up the Constitution in ways I didn't before. It is that the state legislator has the sole plenary power to make election laws, not governors, not secretaries of states, not judges, not private citizens, and not the federal government, may I add, unless it's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, which none of these things are. And in fact, the Attorney General of the United States was threatening, that being Merrick Garland, was threatening to interfere in the Arizona recount. And State Senator Wendy Rogers stepped in and said, if you come down here and try to interfere, I'm going to throw you in jail. So you have some people who understand the Constitution. The federal government has no right legally to interfere. And so that's one thing we can learn. Anyways, look, I shall keep on keeping on. We've got some good guests coming on this week and next. As long as I get this platform, I shall keep it up. If the show is taken off the air on YouTube, I am still carried by about 9 or 10 other live streams, and that's expanding. And I download to the podcast, which appears on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, and a lot of other venues. And I'm up on some of the alternative venues like BitChute and Gab and others, Rumble. And I intend to continue to keep going. I mean, whether I'm censored or not, I suppose I could pull the plug on all of it, but at least I hope to have somewhere where I shall continue this great thing I'm trying to do. If you'd like to see information about all of the other venues, that carry the show go to my website, that being charlesmoscowitz.com. Moscow, like it sounds, it's phonetic, WITZ, charlesmoscowitz.com. And also my books, I mean, I'm self-sponsored, so I might as well take this opportunity to mention that I have almost 20 books published, and they're all available at Amazon Books. Check out my book page on Amazon Books. Just put my name in the server, Charles Moscowitz, and you'll see them come up. My latest book, which is selling better than any of my previous books, it's really quite a thing, is The Satanic Conspiracy, The Spectre Haunting Mankind. There, see, there's my name there. Check it out. It's available at Amazon Books. I'm writing a sequel right now called The Satanic Elite 2020-2021. And I intend to stick with that research. It's pretty revealing and pretty disturbing too. And that's about it for today. I want to thank you for joining me. Please know that you can call the program. I want to give out the number one more time so you have it written down maybe, and maybe call tomorrow. Every day, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The number is 617-396-4958. That number again is 617-396-4958. Okay, Charles Moscowitz signing off. Thank you very, very much, as Elvis Presley would say. God bless you all. God bless America.